What's the culture like inside the cannabis industry? Nice?
Well, yeah, I think it's nice. I mean, it's certainly like it's fairly male dominated, although I think that's changing. I mean, I think people have a lot of negative things to say about cannabis, but what I will say in my experience is that, first of all, it's an extremely enthusiastic industry. I think like people really feel they're at the beginning of something, and that's fun. It's fun to kind of all be in this together, and really everybody is in a battle. And I'm not even joking. Everybody is in a battle for their lives every day because this business is so on the precipice of just like being a disaster.
Yeah.
So there's like camaraderie.
Why is that? Just because regulations are maybe shutting everything down in the next minute?
Because it's a federally illegal business.
Yeah.
There is almost zero access to capital. So all the capital that did pour into the space dried up because all of the businesses that operate legally within their states, because it's federally illegal, they can't trade on the NASDAQ. So they trade on the Canadian Stock Exchange. And that's not a great stock exchange. And they just don't have any access to any institutional capital. So any any
because a bank
banks,
can't say we're invested in this.
No, nothing.
Like legally they can't, or so like
no, cannot. Legally they cannot.
Wow.
And they won't risk it, even though these businesses operate completely legally and they pay all the taxes. Taxes are another big issue. So again, federally illegal. It's cannabis. This is like the biggest disgrace in the whole business. Richard Nixon, when he was president, decided, I can't just throw Black people and hippies in jail anymore. And so I'm going to make drugs public enemy number one, so I can still throw those people in jail, but for different reasons. So he made cannabis a Schedule I drug, which is higher class than cocaine.
Wow.
So cannabis is considered as dangerous as heroin, even though it is a plant and non-addictive and nobody ever dies from it. And it's a completely politically motivated choice. And if something is Schedule I in this country, you pay something called a 280E tax. And a 280E tax means, which is actually a very funny tax created under the Reagan administration when this Coke dealer tried to deduct all his business expenses. Having said that, so now it's like you can't deduct any normal business expenses. And so if you're running a business, and you know this, especially think about a store, all you can deduct is the delta between what you bought your goods for and sold them. You can't deduct rent. You can't deduct employees. You can't any goods, nothing.
Because it's federally illegal?
As it's Schedule I.
Wow.
So 80-90% of people's profits are going to the government, even though the government doesn't recognize them as legal. And so they can't get any money. So it's this tension. And that's mostly the big businesses, but it happens with the small people too, the small dispensaries, the small businesses. And the other thing, I don't know if I'm going to round to this point where it's cohesive, but what I was going to say that's good about cannabis is that there is not a person working in cannabis who doesn't understand the sacrifices that came before us to get us here. So this war on drugs decimated Black and brown communities. It was totally racially motivated, and it took people who maybe had 2 joints and put them in jail for things like 11 years. I mean, ruined families, ruined communities. And so everybody is aware that we owe those people. We owe them money. We owe them it's just it's not fair for everybody who's coming to it now to benefit from it alone. So all the big businesses, they're really committed to give backs, to supporting institutions like the Last Prisoner Project, who's fighting always to get people who are in jail for cannabis out of jail, hosting expungement clinics, hiring people who have been in jail for cannabis. So there is that, I think there's that conscientiousness in the industry, which is really important. But it also, what is part of the problem, just going back to what I was telling you about taxes, is that from the federal level, I think the government is trying to right those wrongs as well. And when cities come on and states come on, they try to give licenses to people who have been incarcerated. Right. New York did it too, to say, you've paid the price for this. We want you to make money in this. However, if you have no access to capital, you can't build a business. Right. If you can't get a loan, if you can't bank in a bank account, you can't get a bank. People are putting their money in credit unions. It makes zero sense, and it needs to be fixed.
Wow. But what a risky and scary business to be a part of. I mean,
no, it is risky and scary.
But you believe in it that much.
Look, I mean, having said all of that, there was something like $30 to $40 billion of legal cannabis sold last year. Legal. So double that number. Right. I'm sure $80 billion of cannabis was sold, and there was only $100 billion of beer sold last year. So it is a very important industry. And not only that, it is one of the biggest job creators in states where it's legalized, one of the biggest tax revenue creators. And I believe, and I really believe it in my bones, cannabis is much better for you than alcohol, even though I totally drink alcohol. But like, I don't think there's any reason why this shouldn't be legal. And I think there is absolutely accepted medical use here, and it's been studied for 20 something years. So yeah, I believe in it that much. I think it's really going to be a big part of the future.